Hello, everyone. Kent Bressler here. I want to welcome you to Kent's Kidney Stories. During our time together over these podcasts, I'd like to discuss kidney disease. I'd like to tell you about my journey as a transplant patient, but also talk about dialysis, kidney donation, and just about anything else that might be of interest. Kent's Kidney Stories, a podcast endorsed and sponsored by kidneysolutions.org. Hello, everybody. This is Kent Bressler, and we're on Kent's Kidney Stories. Going to be starting with prayer. It's morning where I am. I don't know where it is when you're listening, but we're going to start with the prayer, and then we're going to go from there. And here we go. Lord, emotional wounds can be deep and overwhelming. Please heal our hearts and grant us the strength to forgive those who've hurt us. Help us release the pain and find solace in your unconditional love, and fill our hearts with compassion and understanding towards others. And let us be a source of healing for those around us. Thank you for your loving presence in our lives, that we may do your good work. Amen. So I wanted to talk this morning a little bit about accessing kidney solutions, because we've made some major changes since I was out sick. As a donor and or a recipient, either or, if you want help finding a kidney donor, or if you are somebody who would like to donate a kidney, what we ask you to do is go on kidneysolutions.org, kidneysolutions.org. And when you tap on that, and when you come up in your browser, when you see the web page, the first one, it says, want to be a donor, want to be a recipient, or vice versa. All you have to do is click on those and fill out the membership to Kidney Solutions. At that point in time, that's all you need to do. You then can just hang on, and we'll get back to you. We'll be Barbie Lundberg, my special quality agent who does the intakes, will be contacting you to give you further instructions, and then we'll go from there. And then you become part of the Kidney Solutions family. It's a big deal. I love it. It works real good. It cuts down on phone calls and, listening to, listening to people talking on the phone that ain't actually there. I like to talk to somebody, and this will give you a chance to do that. And then I'll get back with you or Shannon, one of the two. Anyway, that's how you do it. Kidneysolutions.org, and you go from there. So today our good friend Matt Novelli is our social media director, and he's developed a really strong friendship with our guest today. And our guest is going to be sharing his kidney journey with us. And at some point in time, I think we're going to invite him into the fold to help us at Kidney Solutions, because I think he's going to be well worth his salt. I'd like to welcome Cody Kubiak, and he's from Elgin, not Elgin, Elgin, Texas. So welcome, Cody.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Matt tells me he met you, and that ever since then you've been pretty strong in friendship, and that you both had a good story and a good journey, and we've podcasted Matt, and he's stuck with us. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about your kidney journey.
Oh
And
yeah.
I know that I'm anxious to hear it, and Matt's told me about it. Anyway, give me a brief background, or I'll tell you what. Why don't you tell me just what it is that you've done with your kidney function?
Sure. All right. Well, I guess I'll start, like I say at the beginning of all this stuff. I was born in 1989, so it was a little, in Central Texas here. It was before they had a lot of kidney stuff around there. So spent a lot of time in Galveston over at UTMB right after I was born, and I had was born with a condition called posterior urethral valves, or PUV. It's honestly, it's the most common urinary tract obstruction basically in a lot of newborns. It's one in every 25,000 or so deal with that. Of course, nowadays you would fix that in utero. They can find all sorts of neat stuff, nowadays compared to when I was younger. But my mom's obstetrician, she always would say, you know his bladder's full, all the time, but never seemed to worry too much about it. So I was born with my kidneys basically shot from that. And
Backed up?
afterwards,
They backed up.
yeah, exactly. It was a backup blockage, and just basically, blocks up and kills them,
Yep.
So I had a whole bunch of surgeries around, the bladder, all that kind of stuff when I was, the first few months of my life. They decided to do uterostomies, and pretty much I had those bags on my sides. I still kind of can faintly remember that. But yeah, it was really interesting, looking back. I don't know much about it. Obviously, I was a baby. My parents can't even tell me how many surgeries there were, but there was a good
Oh my
few
goodness. Yeah.
to get me, started. And, my parents were real warriors. I can't always praise them enough. They learned how to tube feed me. Uh, every single night, would do that. They learned how to just basically navigate all this stuff. And so we still lived, we lived in Austin area, and there was never, anything pediatric there. And excuse me, there was nothing ever pediatric in that area. So I always had to go down to UTMB in Galveston. So we spent lots of time there. Everything went good with those surgeries. And then eventually, my mother was the one who would become my kidney donor. And they waited till I was about 13 months, which that's, I guess, the big thing about my story is nowadays you won't see too many people have, an actual transplant at 13 months old. That's something me and
No, that's
Matt,
pretty young. Pretty young.
yeah, right. Me and Matt kind of shared that, very young transplants. I know nowadays they usually like to wait till you weigh a little bit more, make it a little safer, I assume. But had two amazing doctors, nephrologists, pediatric nephrologist, Dr. Kalia and Dr. Travis, and kept going really good. I kind of, I still remember this. I was kind of like a subject. I was a test subject in a sense, right? They could always look at me and poke and prod and be like, "Man, look at this guy. He's doing really good. He's kicking some butt." He kept going. So
Yeah.
I was kind of happy to have that. It was pretty cool. Um, so everything kept going great after my mom's transplant. Of course, it would have to be my mom. My father is over 6 feet tall, so
Oh
his
wow.
kidney wouldn't,
Big
fit
kidney.
in me, right? And a lot of people, they got to realize too, when you're that young, they cut you straight down the middle. I mean, it's like probably a big chunk of your body cavity is holding that kidney, but your body grew around it really good, and everything stayed great for years and years. Everything from my knowledge, it was really pretty successful. There was never any issues, with my creatinine or any of my levels or anything growing up to that degree. The only big scare I kind of had growing up was in 1994. I would say I was, 5 years old, and I got in a really bad car wreck. Someone pulled right out in front of us and completely, the seatbelt, while the seatbelt saved my life, the seatbelt also hit me right in the gut really hard. So I had internal bleeding.
They compress your kidney?
I guess I'm not sure if it was too
Yeah.
much on the kidney side, but of course they were worried about everything. All I could remember was, throwing up blood everywhere, this, that. Some pretty freaky stuff. Still can remember that stuff. That kind of stuff has always given me some PTSD looking back on it. But I got through that. They went down the same incision that they gave me my transplant from, right down the middle, cleaned everything out, and everything was kind of all right after that. It was a scary bump in the road, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So, thank God, I had a really good family, really good community, people that were just always around me, helping me, pretty much grow up, make things better. So, pretty much after that, I grew up in school. School was fine. Growing up was fine. I still would love to credit my parents, I was one of those kids, me and Matt always talk about, how it's a little different being a young child and having these, kidney transplants, right? You can't play contact sports, right? Or you can't do some of the stuff everyone else did. But my parents never made me feel like I was any different. My parents, made me feel like I could still do anything. I never was, under the impression that I could not do anything, right? I was just a little different. And everything was great. I was went to a private school, did everything, really close to a community, and eventually graduated. Everything went through school was just fine. Felt great. I would have a little bit of ups and downs, but overall, my kidney stayed great with my mom, all the way through my teenage years.
Well, okay.
So I can't, I couldn't complain. Everything was still going great. And since I was born, kind of having into it, it's like there was no clue or idea when that kidney would potentially reject, right? But enjoy, all the great times that you don't have to worry about it. So I went on through life, started going to college, went to ACC, started, trying to become in the gaming industry, video game industry. That's really
Really?
big in Austin.
Yeah.
Uh, thought that'd be some good money, all that stuff. And I was on my last year of my degree and two classes from graduating. And unfortunately, that's when that kidney finally started rejecting.
Oh, reject.
So,
Okay. All right.
yeah, it finally just started, rejecting. They didn't really have a super good beat on why. Uh, they were just like it started just, happening more or less. It just finally started giving out after 25 years.
25 years. I was going to ask you. 25 years.
Yeah, so
Okay.
25 years, and I looked back on that and I was like, from what I understand, usually it transplants, around 10 to maybe 15 if you're lucky, so
Living donors
25
20.
is great.
Yeah.
Was it
Living
20?
donors can go as much as 20, as much as
Okay, well,
20. Yeah.
hmm
Yeah.
and I mean, yeah, and we've had a family friend who I believe she's had a transplant for goodness, I think it's going on almost 40 years.
Yeah. I'm at
Uh,
37.
yeah, so I was happy with the 25 I got, right? And was like, okay, this is, a little jarring, a little scary. Um, we all kind of, I don't know, took a big, deep breath, prayed, did a lot of stuff because we kind of knew, my parents knew that day would kind of probably inevitably come at some point. So we kind of just gathered around community and prayed hard and tried to more or less just get something going, get a group going, get something on social media, some awareness to try to find me a new kidney transplant. And I had a great friend at the time, Erica. She helped me create a group called Cody's Warriors. We did that. And I had several people get tested for me. And, first of all, that's the other big thing when something like that happens. It really warms your heart when you see multiple people get tested for you because you can't ask someone to be tested for you. That's not something you casually ask somebody. So just to have people showing how much they cared by having, going through all that testing that you have to do really touched me, really made me feel good and, special. And I think we had about three or four people get tested, and one by one, my cousin, she had a cyst on her kidney, so she couldn't do it, or, my uncle couldn't donate for, X or Y reason. They would always basically
Always
chalk
found a
someone off.
reason not.
Right. Find some reason, because I mean, it's like goodness, they want, which I understand, but they want almost the perfect individual out
Yes,
there.
sir. Yeah.
So I understand that, but it was also that made the search very hard. Um, so I was kind of starting to get down, of course, that last year I took a bunch of Epogen shots just to keep me going. Had to go every week for that.
And you were on dialysis.
I didn't. I actually
You
was very
didn't go on
close.
dialysis? See, there you go.
Not yet. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, so I got incredibly lucky. That's another, feels like something from God, just like
Oh
a
yeah.
storybook thing. I was actually touring the dialysis facility, getting ready to get on PD. They thought, PD, peritoneal dialysis would work
Hmm.
best for me, someone
Hmm.
my age. And I was, at the point where I toured the facility and I had an appointment to go see a vascular surgeon to get a fistula.
Yeah.
And that within those last 2 weeks, my aunt, who's not even an aunt, through blood, just through marriage, got tested and everything was great.
It
They
was a
said
good
yes.
match.
It was a good match, and they said yes within, and I mean, I was down to 7% function when that
Oh
happened.
wow. 7%. And how old then at that point in time? 26, 7?
I was 26.
Okay, 26. All right.
Yeah, it was in 2015, so this is my 10-year anniversary too. If I make it to September,
Wow.
this would be great.
Oh, you will. You will.
I'm sure, yeah,
Oh,
everything's
yes,
been
you will.
great.
Yes, you will.
So everything was, just mind-blowingly excited, I mean, just it really felt like everything just came together. I mean, I even had the part where the kind of comically, the surgeon called me. He's like, "Okay, I'm gonna get, this done." And I said, "No, no, no, I got saved. I'm actually lucky." So, and of course, still by 2015, of course, Matt, he just had his at the same hospital that I was normally going to, Austin Diagnostic Clinic. Well, they
Okay.
weren't doing transplants then, and they weren't quite there yet. So I went to San Antonio. They had the Methodist Transplant
Methodist
Hospital there.
Transplant Hospital. That's where I was transplanted. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, I was blown away by that facility. Just I mean, just how much on top of everything they have for all sorts of, liver, kidney, you name it, and everything went great. So basically, yeah, everything went great with that second transplant. There was, a little bit of wiggle room, a little scariness, At first, you're always trying to get everything adjusted. All those meds, you have to
Oh
go
God.
through a good
Yeah.
couple months of that, right?
Yeah.
And everything got settled pretty quickly with that. So that was, September, right? Just 2 months later, come November, again, this is a thing about my crazy story. Within 2 months of my transplant, I was diagnosed with PTLD, which forgive me if I, can't say it right, but it's like post-transplant lymphoratic disorder. Basically, I got lymphoma,
Yep.
non-Hodgkin's lymphoma from
Which is the
basically after the
cancer.
transplant.
Yeah.
Right, and I found out basically kind of the reason I got that was my donor had like the EB virus, and I was never exposed to it, and that's what did it.
Okay.
But I guess they thought, the transplant doctors, they're like, well, goodness, he's within a week of dialysis, 7%. Let's take that risk. So they did. But I had lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, diagnosed with that November, December, and basically went back to Methodist. And Methodist decided to see how well I would, take on chemotherapy. They put me on Rituxan, and that worked like a charm. Again,
Rituximab.
yep,
Yeah.
rituximab, yep, you
Uh-huh.
got it. And again, my body started, it tolerated that medicine really, really well. Just shock at how
How
awesome,
long were you on that treatment?
So I was on that treatment for 4 months. That was
4
it.
months.
Which
Okay.
I say that's it. That makes it sound easier than it is.
No.
It's
Yeah.
it's still cancer. It's still having to go, once a week. Which I was lucky enough to only have to go once a week. I always tell
Right.
myself, at least I got through it. As I guess unscathed in a way as I did. They caught it so early. So I did all that. Went to Texas Oncology here. I had amazing oncologists, amazing nurses. They took care of me, got that done, and within 4 months, I was in remission. So,
Good
pretty,
gracious.
pretty nuts year there, to go
Yeah.
through. I was like, wow, transplant and then cancer. So, I could say I got through that stuff, and that stuff still to this day, looking back on it, it was a whirlwind. It was a whirlwind of just. It reminded me of when I was young. It's just pokes, prods, needles. You're just doing what you have to do.
Exactly.
And you
Yep.
have people who, they will recognize how awesome, I guess, a lot of having to go through that stuff is. And I'd always get, praised. I don't know how you do this or that. And I always tell people, well, you don't have an option, right?
No,
You have to
no, you
wake up
don't.
each day. Yeah.
Yeah,
You have to wake up each day, pray to God the day will keep going well, and just go out there and do all you can do.
we
Every
call
day's a
it
little
living.
different.
We call it living. Go out and
Exactly.
live, right?
Right. So, that's about all you can do is just keep soldiering on, keep doing things, and I would just try to use, it was at that point I started thinking, man, this is a lot of crazy stuff already happening in my life. I was only 27 at that point, going on 28. And I'm like, well, I should share all this stuff. I should share this story. Maybe I can inspire some people. And it just kept going and going. Slowly things snowballed. So at the same time, these were both happening the next year. We're up to about 2017, all right, 20, 18 around there. 2017, I had found out because I've been on prednisone my whole life, right? There was no lull in my treatment of, having to keep this organ going. So I've been on prednisone virtually every day since, I was born almost.
Yeah.
And the doctors, the rheumatologists, they were always like, goodness, we see this in a lot of kidney people, but you've really had it. So within a year, not even maybe a year of the cancer, getting over that and finally having remission of that, I found out I had avascular necrosis,
Yep.
which basically the prednisone ate my bone away. It was dissolved at the joint. So I had to have a total right hip replacement within a
Yeah.
year of that. So I just, kept kind of thinking to myself, all right, well, this is a test, but it's just another brick in the wall. It's just another, good story to tell once it's over with.
Right.
As crazy as that was. And again, I had an amazing doctor, amazing orthopedic surgeon. Because I was young, they actually used a ceramic hip on me. So that's some kind of newish tech, instead of the metal where you have to go back in. Because again, I'm so young, they're like, well, if we do a old school metal one on you, we're gonna have to open you up in another 35 years and replace that.
Or maybe
So let's
sooner.
try, right?
Yeah,
So
maybe.
they're like, let's try ceramic and see how that goes. So that's really interesting. Who knows? I'm kind of a test with that one. We'll see where that goes.
So how
But
long
so
have you had
far,
the
great.
ceramic in?
I've had the ceramic in ever since 2017, and everything's been great.
That's 8 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully it goes all the way to the end, right? That's why I say
Well,
it's a
it is.
good little test to show people.
Yeah, it's just a matter of coping with it, just dealing with it. There's nothing
Mhm.
you can do. I mean, you just
Right.
that's where faith comes in.
That's where faith comes in, and that's the thing I would try to get across people that all that kind of stuff that's happened to me. There's no way to most of us that was by coincidence. And I always said, even as a little boy, I was like, well, God's keeping me around for a reason. Not sure exactly what my
What your role will
goal
be.
is yet, where I'm gonna fit in. But the more time went by and the more spice, I guess you could argue, got added to my story, I was like, well, I could actually use this to help some people. So as I recovered from that hip replacement, which that was, a little bit of a slow recovery, that one actually wasn't too bad. Um, I was starting to come up with ideas of making a blog or writing a book, something along those lines
Sure.
of basically everything I'm talking about now, just with more meat to it. And as I was starting to kind of formulate and work on that, I got AVN again. I got avascular necrosis then in my navicular bone, my left foot. And your navicular bone is basically the big one on the very top that controls a lot of stuff. So they had to basically get that navicular bone out, and I have a couple screws and pins, and they had to bone graft my, foot there. So I've had that surgery now, and that's the thing, and that was in 2019. So that was literally 2 years after the hip. And I got to a point where I started having a lot of depression, right? A lot of,
Yeah.
bad thoughts after all that because I'm like, goodness, it was the hip, then it was the foot, then I had cancer, and I'm just starting to think, so many things were happening one after another. I thought, for a minute, this might never end. When is it gonna stop necessarily being so rough? And I kind of, had to rely on a lot of friends, rely on some therapy, rely on a lot of things, to get me through that, to kind of change my attitude about it, and say, well, you just got to keep going. And sure enough, after all that, I've been lucky, knock on wood, that everything's been okay. Ever since that last foot surgery, I have not had a super major surgery, of course, outside the normal kidney biopsy or some
Right.
smaller procedure like that.
So
So I
you're
thank God every day. I've had now 6 years about
yeah,
with no problems, and I share that. When you go through that kind of stuff, you see life different. You really do. You start to enjoy your days more. You enjoy little things more that most people take for granted. You really start to appreciate just so much more because, there's that flip side of things, right? And you realize, man, there's some tough days like anybody, but the good outweigh the bad. The good things always outweigh the negative things. So that was pretty much, how a lot of that stuff went. The COVID period was obviously scary for a lot.
did you get through that
During
pretty well?
I went through that pretty well. I did what most people couldn't do, which was stay at home for a year
Yeah.
because of, being immunocompromised. I
I pretty much
absolutely,
said the same thing. I think
yeah.
absolutely.
Just to be safe, I mean, there in the beginning, it was very scary. And I was one of the people who got, this first couple vaccines just to say, hey,
Good.
be
Good.
safe. But the thing that was interesting too, after those first couple, my nephrologist was like, just stay at home and try not to, which that's the thing that always blew me away. I've always, it's been ingrained in me because I was little, always ingrained, to wash my hands after everything I do.
Sure.
You know, I feel like I was the only one to do that, but again, I'm immunocompromised. Most people just never think to do it that much that well. So I've kind of gotten lucky in that respect anyway. So I only had those first two vaccines, but I never caught it until about the second year, and I did catch it. But I got through it fine. I actually never even had to go to the doctor for it.
Did
I,
they?
I
Oh, you
stayed
never had to
home.
take any medicine? You didn't take any antivirals? Well,
I
that's cool.
no,
That's great.
I somehow,
Yeah.
but it blows me away. That kidney was that awesome. It could,
Yeah.
help fight that off.
Well, what
So
blows me away is it's still there.
yeah, I know it. And that's the thing I've been so lucky with. So recently, the biggest, latest thing of this last year, I've always had the big nervous, and me and Matt talk about this often because it's ingrained in you a little different when it's from a child. Always worrying about those creatinine numbers, like a hawk, just
Yeah.
every couple months. And my nephrologist, he's like, your stuff's good enough, you can only get labs every 4 months. And I'll be the one to say, no, I want them every month. I actually want to watch my stuff very closely. I don't mind doing that. So this last year, I had a lot of issues with my creatinine going up. And what that turned out to be was Tecro prograph toxicity,
Yep.
which I had never heard of that, never knew that was a thing. But I guess my previous nephrologist, she had it, which my new nephrologist, in my opinion, is much better than my previous one. No shade on my previous one. It's just I was very in and out. My
Pretty more,
current one
probably
was
more, much more knowledgeable. Had more
right.
experience with it. Okay.
Yeah, because my current one, he'll sit there for half an hour with me. Not
Yeah.
many doctors I feel don't do that anymore,
I
very
know I'm like
personal.
that too.
Right. And it's like, hey, I'd love to just ask questions. I like to know things. But apparently I had too much Prograf, by just, goodness, like point 0.1. I mean, the smallest extra bit. And so what they did was did a biopsy. And that biopsy was this last September. And they actually told me, again, something to make me feel really proud of myself. They said, your kidney actually doesn't even have as much scarring as a normal kidney would at my age
See.
after 10 years.
Yeah.
So,
Because it's been that's 10 in years in you, and then it was in quite a few years with your donor. So
yes.
I mean, that doesn't, that's the clock
Yeah.
started when she was born.
Oh yes, and that kidney's been going. Let's see. I want to say that kidney's close to 50 now.
See?
And
See, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. And my
Mm.
mom's, that one still, that's the other thing that freaks people out when I tell them I got four kidneys in me. They don't
Yes,
realize they don't take
yes,
some of the others out of you.
yeah.
So always a cool little story, this and that.
No,
Uh,
it's a great story, and I'll tell you why. Because you pointed out a couple things that I
mhm,
wanted to stress. The ability or your ability to deal with something when it happened and not to worry about thinking about what could happen. You spent a lot of time, I think,
mhm.
just going ahead and living, and then when something happened, you just dealt with it. What else could
Yeah.
you do?
Yeah. You don't have much of an option. A
No,
lot of
you
people,
don't.
they got to realize that you got to kind of, and you also get kind of in a little bit of a survival mode in a weird way.
Sure.
Your brain can kind
Absolutely.
of turn a little switch and it's like a mission and it's like, what do I need to do to get myself back? You know? Um, so the big thing, I was lucky, they said my kidney didn't have that much scarring, so they just switched me to the Envarsus
And away you go.
and everything's been great. Everything,
Yeah.
that creatinine has just been going down by almost a point every month. So I'm down to 1.7. It was at 2.2
Oh.
just a couple months ago. So it's amazing.
There's a This is a great story because it has a flavor of you're going to do what you need to do, not
Yeah.
necessarily what you have to do. You really
Hmm.
need to do it, but you
Hmm.
don't get excited about numbers, so to speak.
Yeah.
What you want to do is live and then allow yourself some time to realize that you're going to go through things in life, no matter whether you've had a kidney transplant or not. It
Right.
doesn't cure you, but what it does is allows you to live and you go on living. And when something happens, then you deal with it. And I
Yeah.
think that's the penchant for a kidney transplant patient. Do
Oh, yeah.
something about it when it happens.
Yeah, people will realize, a lot of there's, and I have a lot of it too. I wasn't all positive and smiles, there's a lot of self-doubt, this and that, but you'll
Sure.
realize you have more strength in you than you realize. Everybody does. Everybody has a lot more inner strength than they think they do, to really pull themselves through some of this stuff. And it's scary. It's, worrisome. All this stuff can be, overwhelming many a times to many people, but that's okay. As long as, like you say, you're still living, you're fine, in a sense. You just got
Yeah,
to
well,
keep pushing on, trucking on.
you are, and I really like the idea that they have to realize that they've got to go to the doctor.
Yes.
A lot of people, given the fact that they don't start so young, most people
Mm.
start when they're in their 30s and 40s when they get a
Oh, yeah.
transplant, if you will. And
Hmm.
that gives you a lot of you had to grow up.
Yeah.
You had to mature. You not only physically but mentally and emotionally. And that's a
Yeah.
drain. That's hard on you with all the,
Very.
hormones. Yeah. Yeah.
Growing up, I did have a little disconnect, from the rest of the kids my age. Always been that
Sure.
way because I had to literally grow up around adults. I was
Yeah.
growing up, in doctor's offices. I was, dealing with serious terms, serious things always. I've always had, a little different mindset with that stuff. But yeah, the big good thing, I kept pushing through this stuff. So I eventually did write all my stuff in a blog. And I have my own website, kidneysquitwedon't.com.
Kidneys quit, we don't.com.
Yep. My friend
That's
helped me come
great.
up with that name, and I love that name, and I stuck with it. And I'm like, I'm going to keep that as my URL.
There
And
you
so that's
go.
a website out there. Anyone can look that up and actually everything I'm saying, of course, off the cuff and, forgetting a couple details, this and that. I have everything, pictures, details, all on there. And I really wish my hope is to kind of turn all that into something bigger. I wish to help more people. I've had a couple people call me, randomly from, finding out through my website, asking for advice. And that right there, that has to be the thing that makes me feel better than anything on earth. A lot of people don't get that either. The feeling you get from helping people. And I've kind of made that my goal, that is my purpose. It's like I have a unique experience and especially the kiddos, right? Especially all these pediatric uh nephrology. It don't even matter if it's nephrology, anything, having to go through all this stuff. Hospitals, growing up in a hospital. And I always told myself, I'm a single child. I'm an only child. Um, I never had anyone. I never had a book. I never had anyone. I didn't even meet Matt until I was, 34.
Yeah,
I never
yeah,
even
that was
knew
just
anyone
yeah,
else.
yeah, yeah.
So I always told myself, there's no guidebook to all this stuff because I help so many people through all sorts of different random groups all over online. None of it's really coordinated, but everyone's always got the same questions, a lot of the same concerns. And it's like, okay, no one wrote a guidebook for this, and you kind of can't because everyone's situation's so different.
Absolutely.
But I could at least kind of make a guide that maybe gives someone, and I have actually had some countless people really tell me, thanks for telling me that my child, had PUV or had a transplant. My child is, all that stuff. And they say, reading my story or looking at my story, seeing how I overcame and went through all this stuff, that gives them hope for their child now.
I think
And
I think
that,
there's a excuse me that
yeah.
there's a there's a place for you in the children's world because there's more and more is being discovered
Mhm.
about kidney disease with children. And
Yeah.
I have a very good friend in the industry. His name is James Myers, and he has
Hmm.
and I'm going to put you in touch with him too.
Yep. I
One
know
of the-
exactly who you're talking
yeah,
about.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he does great work.
yeah. But he does a lot in the children's world, and he has a big heart for the kiddos.
Yeah.
And of course, then there's my group here that we spend a lot of time mentoring.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
you're welcome to join us at any point in time.
Oh yeah, I'd love to, and that's my thing, trying to balance my life with, trying to get that started, and
What
I
is it that you're doing now? What is it that what's your
so my lifestyle right now, I just kind of try to keep myself busy and keep myself going as much as I can. I'm actually on disability because I've been on all those meds for so long. I had to go to a couple of doctors. They had a test. They decided to do a lung test. I saw a pulmonologist. I saw a cardiologist. I did a heart stress test, this, that, just to see why. I'd always get super fatigued. I've always, compared to all the other kids, and I have hypertension. I was born with hypertension,
yeah,
but I was
likely
always
due
just
to the
so
chemotherapy.
exhausted.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so it took them a bunch of testing, 6 months of testing, all sorts of different tests to finally kind of come to a conclusion of, yeah, this is all just side effects from you having all those medications and all the side effects for almost 36 years now straight.
Yeah.
So all that stuff put together just kind of knocked me out in that sense, and that's another thing that kind of depressed me, put me on, under my feet. I had career plans, I had ambitions. I had a lot of want to do a lot of things, normally. And once 2015 happened and it was just one thing after another, after another, after another, it just kind of put me out of it. So I had to regather myself. I had to, put myself back together. That was a whirlwind of stuff, one after another. I hope I don't have to go through another 5 year period of one thing after another, right? But if I do, I do, and if I do, I have, I'll
You
already
got
know, like I've
experience.
told myself, exactly. I've
You've
already
got the
faced it.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
nothing
bring it
can't
on.
do.
Yeah, bring
All
it
right,
on. I'm ready. Yeah. I feel
exactly.
the same
So,
way. I feel the
yep.
same way. And
So,
if you do the numbers on your transplants, you've been transplanted as long as I have, but you started a lot earlier.
yeah,
I was 37 years old when I started.
yep.
I
So
mean, as
I'm
far
about
as
at
the
the point where
transplant.
you started, yeah. And I mean, it's a different, you have to always, that's why another thing, you learn to enjoy every little thing a little bit more because you never know, how things are going to turn out. You never know what ups or downs are going to happen. So you got to enjoy life. You got to try to enjoy each day. And, it's easier said than done, but
You
that's another
enjoy,
reason I do outreach,
yeah,
outreach makes me feel great.
enjoying it. Part of that is giving back and sharing your story and being able to assist people when they ask. And that's
Yeah.
what makes it so good for us at Kidney Solutions. We're all volunteers,
Hmm.
and that's a real blessing for us. So
Oh, yes. So that's kind of been my goal. If I could, whether it's public speaking, whether it's setting something up, whether it's, it doesn't matter really. I just, want to put myself in a better position to share this story. It's definitely not over yet.
Oh,
It's being
you've
written
got a
every
long ways to
day.
go to make
That's
it to
yeah.
100.
I'm pretty young,
Yeah,
so
you are. You're very young.
we'll
Yeah.
see where all this goes. Keeps
Yeah.
going, and story's far from over, but it's pretty exciting.
You're
Uh, you
willing to
know,
live it.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, you gotta just let everything go and enjoy life as much as possible.
There you go. Well, it's been great talking to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I think what we're going to do is we'll explore avenues that we can help each other in our getting the word out. I
Sure.
just wanted to tell you that I really do appreciate it, and I appreciate the fact that you're good friends with a good friend of mine,
Well,
and
I
that's getting back
appreciate
to
you
my
giving
brother.
me the opportunity to, even share my story. This is kind of all I wish, to do in some degree is just let more people know. The more people that
Yeah,
know, the
that's
better.
right. Yeah.
More people I can help, the better. So
Have you
hopefully get
been
my website kicking off.
have you been on Jim Myers' show?
No, I have not.
Okay, then
This is
that'll
my
be
only
our
second.
next.
Yeah.
Yeah, this will be our plan is to get you on that show because he's with Kidney Solutions too. We were close
I
together.
have it linked on my website. Actually, there's only one other podcast I've done, and that was with Steve Belcher,
Uh-huh. Okay.
and everything was good with his. So we'll see where all this goes. Like I say, I love to keep going. I like to keep all this stuff basically giving people hope, giving people inspiration. It's a never-ending reward.
It is, and we'll work towards that end. So
I
we're gonna
appreciate it.
close it up, and I'll get with Jim, and I'll have him get in contact with you, and I'm sure that he'll have you on for sure. Because
Awesome.
if I podcast him and recommend him, he'll do them.
Heck yeah. Well, let's get it all shaken, and let's,
Yeah,
the
and
more people we reach, the better.
when we finish this up, it's available to you. It's yours. It's not mine. It's
Oh yeah.
cataloged under me, but you can use it wherever you want to, however
Yeah.
you want to.
Oh yeah. Well, that's, spread it out the most, the
Exactly.
more people, like I say, the better. Let everybody know, I'm here to talk. You guys are here, for
Yeah.
others to talk. There's help out there, so if you feel like you need it, please use it.
Well, Gate, say your website again. Tell everybody your
It
website.
is www.kidneysquitwedon't.com. Just run together, there's no spaces.
Kidneys
And yeah,
quit, we don't.
yep.
All right.
Pretty good way to remember. I thought that was a good slogan. Kidneys quit, we don't.
Great. And and if people if they get contact me through my through Kidney Solutions,
Mhm.
it's not a problem. I can share your phone number and the
Yeah, yeah,
email.
no problem.
Okay.
I love it.
All right, so we're gonna wind it up, and I do appreciate you. Hang in there just a second till I finish
Mhm.
up my folks out here. Okay, folks, listen. There's one thing you can rest assured that God's plan for you has not ended. He's always looking forward to working with you. So are you listening? Is the key. He talks to you all the time. He allows you to do what you're doing in a very comfortable and faithful way. And so I want you to build yourself up with prayer to Him and thanks. But also, I want you to think about all the people out here that are looking for kidney donors. There are hundreds upon thousands that would be able to work today much better if they had a kidney transplant. And if you're a sound mind and sound body and would like to donate, contact us at kidneysolutions.org. We'll give you an idea how you can help because there are plenty of people out there that need you. So until the next time we meet, keep breathing.